Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my ranking of my favorite Star Trek book covers. This is a fun video series I've done for many different series. I've done a favorite fantasy book covers video. I've talked about my favorite Star Wars book covers, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite Star Trek book covers. This isn't a huge list because Star Trek book covers don't tend to land on like favorite covers for me because typically they're not as highly produced. They're not usually big paintings. I am a painting person when it comes to my covers. I want them to be of this gorgeous thing where if I blew it up and made it a big painting, I would hang it on my wall and it would look gorgeous on my wall. That is usually not the case. Usually it's just a couple of characters on the screen, sometimes cutouts from the shows, sometimes they've been painted over in some way, but it's usually maybe a ship's on there and it's not highly produced because the budget for a Star Trek novel is not the same as a budget for a Star Wars novel because Star Wars tends to have higher sales and some fantasy books have higher sales as well. So it's harder to narrow or to determine which ones are the best. But I have 5 books and/or trilogies that I will consider in my favorite book covers list, and so I thought I'd talk about them here. So my number 5 is a standalone book, and that is The Antares Maelstrom by Greg Cox. Consequently, one of my favorite Star Trek novels. Some of the books on here are favorites, and some of them are not favorites. 2 on the list are non-favorites when it comes to just as favorite books, and then 3 of them actually are some of my favorite Star Trek books. So it's not just, I didn't just pick them for that reason. But this one I picked because of the paintingness imagery. The ship looks really good on here, and then when you add in these other ships, it looks really sci-fi, and then you have this kind of storm going on in the background, hinting at the Maelstrom, and then you have this element of exploration, this new type of world that's different from most worlds. You know, it's kind of brownish. That doesn't look like any planet in our solar system. You've got kind of an orange background, which makes it stand out. So many of them are just black or blue backgrounds, and this one just stands out and just looks really pretty, which is why it's my number 5. My number 4 is a trilogy. It is the Legacies trilogy. You have the first book was by Greg Cox, the second book was by David Mack, and the third book is by Dayton Ward and Kevin Dillmore. And this whole trilogy, you know, this was released as part of the 50th anniversary of the Star Trek. It was released in 2016 for the 50th anniversary, and this trilogy it's a good trilogy as a whole. But what makes this the painting work so well for me is this one. It has the green coloring, and it just has this mystery to it, this unexplored nature to it, and that I really like the painting here. And then the other books, you know, the second book, it's blue, which gives it kind of a dark tone, and you're starting to see this this tower here, which if you've read the books, you know what this is, and it kind of starts revealing a little bit more about it, and it just has this nice. To me, it feels a little bit like Endor to me from Star Wars, and I liked that. And then the third book shows the building in its entirety, and it looks really nice with the ship there and it gives it some perspective and context. And when you have the green theme of the first book and the blue theme of the second and the orange of the third, and you put them together, it has a nice aesthetic to it. So that's why I like that. The number 3 on my list is not a style I would normally go for, but is still, I think, very well done, and that is the Coda Trilogy, which is the final trilogy of books in the post-Nemesis timeline for Star Trek. You have Coda, the Moments Asunder by Dayton Ward. You have The Ashes of Tomorrow by James Swallow, and then you have Oblivion's Gate by David Mack. And each of these by themselves is an okay cover, but when you put them together and you have the triptych, you have the whole picture where first in this book it just looks like normal space stuff's happening, but it's a little bit odd. And then with the second book you have more of the ships in there, and you can tell, oh, something's breaking down here. And then everything just looks like it's going haywire in the third book. And when you put them together, it's that triptych is where the three books together form a single cover. This is the only triptych on my list, although there are other Star Trek trilogies that have done this, but I just think that they work really well together. And so that's why that's my number 3. My number 2 on my list is my most recent read for Star Trek, and that is the book Force in Motion. This has the research station of the Robert Hooke there. It has this kind of blue energy field causing everything to go haywire. You have our two main characters, Chief O'Brien and Commander Nog, and you have their shuttle, the Amazon, and it's just, this is a gorgeous imagery. And it's the most like I picked this book up purely because of the cover, and the author a little bit, but I picked it up because of the cover, and I was really interested in that. And the story in the book is fantastic anyway. It's one of my favorite Star Trek stories. But the imagery on here is just beautiful, and the blue lighting that's kind of like an almost neon kind of, it really makes the book stand out. This has that kind of black background that a lot of the books have, because it has that highlight, that blue highlight that just makes the book stand out more. I really love it. So that's my number 2. My number 1, I talk about these books so much when I talk about Star Trek. This one is an example of these are my favorite Star Trek books of all time, some of my Star Trek storytelling of all time, and just one of my favorite trilogies of all time, if I'm being honest. I love it that much. And that is the Prey trilogy by John Jackson Miller. You have the first book, Hell's Heart. You have the second book, The Jackal's Trick, and the third book, The Hall of Heroes. These books have seen better days because I've read them a couple of times, and they're fantastic books, and I want to read them again eventually. But you have the first book, Hell's Heart. You have, that kind of orange coloring with the black background. That orange coloring really makes the book pop a little bit. And you have the Enterprise E, which is enormous, and then you have the Enterprise A, which is much smaller, and then even smaller than that are some birds of prey. How are they possibly on the same cover? Why would you put those on the same cover? You find out in this book, and it's not because they're taking place at the same time, but both eras are represented here. And it's just a superb book anyway, but I just love the imagery of the two Enterprises on there. One of the few books that does that properly, because sometimes they try to put two ships side by side, and it just doesn't work well in the cover, but this one does. Then you have The Jackal's Trick, which is a similar art style, but it's doing a totally different idea. This one conveys scope and size by having this kind of jackal / devil-like creature. If you read the book, you know exactly what this is, but you have this creature that looks like it's carrying a planet. What? And it's got these two birds. It's got a bird of prey and a Klingon battle cruiser on it. And again, the theme is prey. It's the Klingons. This is the big Klingon trilogy. But this book is just fantastic. And I know I have that big line down here because I messed up the book in my backpack when I was a kid. I apologize for that. But it is a just gorgeous. When I showed this to my parents, they were horrified, and I was like, yeah, this book gets you going. And then the third book in the trilogy is The Hall of Heroes, which has Kahless the Unforgettable and Worf on the cover, and it's got another bird of prey, again, because it's the Prey trilogy, and it really makes them stand out and pop on the cover, and I really like it. Of the trilogy, it's my least favorite of the covers, but as a trilogy, it's got a great color. And again, the first book has that kind of green element to it when you look at the side and the back, and then it also has some green on the front. The second book has the purple aesthetic that works really well for it, and then the third book has the blue aesthetic that works well. So again, the people who make Star Trek books, they're not necessarily the best paintings, but they oftentimes have good aesthetics that make the book stand out and work well. And this was also released as part of the 50th anniversary of the of Star Trek back in 2016, as was Force in Motion. So, man, were they doing some good covers back in 2016. I wish they continued to do that now. The covers are not the best now, although they're still very well done. But those are my favorite Star Trek book covers. If you like Star Trek book cover art, not just your favorite Star Trek books, not just your favorite, although if it happens to work out like some of mine did, sure. But tell me what your favorite Star Trek cover art is. Let me know that down in the comments down below. Please subscribe to the channel and follow for more videos. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.